All right, I've got a KTM 690 Enduro here. It's a 2017. I want to make a kickstand dongle for it. So the kickstand, of course, is this guy right here. It is known to have issues because it has like a sort of magnetic sensor that resides up in this range here. And that sensor gets corroded, gets damaged, whatever, gets dirty, and then it ceases to function correctly and will not let you put the bike in gear and go. So that's a known issue on these bikes. I want to prevent that. I'm going to make my own dongle. If you follow the wiring from the kickstand sensor, it runs up. It runs up. This little cable tie here is holding the wiring for it. This guy right here is our connection for the kickstand sensor. And so I can disconnect the kickstand sensor right here. The bike will no longer let me put it in gear if I do that. But it does allow us access to install a kickstand dongle. I've also ordered this kit of little connectors, and these should be the exact same connectors for the stock switch. So I should be able to just unplug and make my own little dongle out of this guy and then plug it back in to the stock wiring harness. All right, so getting this guy unplugged is a bit of a pain, but once unplugged, here we are. I just want to verify that this is indeed, oh yeah, that will fit on there. So this is the one we want, is this end. This is the male end. The female end is this one. This one stays on the bike. So this part goes to the wiring harness, to the computer and whatnot on the bike, and this is the one that counts. You can remove this if you want to, take that right off the bike, save some weight that way, and then this one is going to pop in here, pop in there like that. But we need to actually make this into a dongle. We need to set it up with a resistor that will basically give the computer the correct reading to allow it to put the bike in gear. I've also got some 2200 ohm resistors, or 2.2K resistors. On our stock wiring harness, there are 3 wires that feed this connector. One is blue, one is black, and one is like a pink, red, orangey color there. We should be using the orange and the black on this, and then the blue one we just leave alone. We'll basically be making a jumper between the black and the orange, but the jumper will consist of that resistor. All right, so all we need is one resistor here. Take these guys out, pull the resistor off the end here, and I'm going to test it out here first. All right, I've got a resistor sort of temporarily stuck in there. I'm going to start the bike up, put it in gear, and see if it will stay running. Alright, so that works. That dongle works. Alright, so with that verification, we can now go ahead and construct our dongle. We know it's going to actually work. So what we're going to do here, we've got this, like I said, this is the male end of the connector. And I'm going to put a link in the description to all these components. We're going to use this. We're going to use our resistor here, our 2.2K resistor. We've got 2 little terminals, pins, whatever you want to call them. Electrical terminals that go with this connector. This all comes as a kit. Everything comes together here. We've also got, and I also need some heat shrink here. The heat shrink will just make this a little bit neater. We also want a little rubber end cap like this guy here, and that goes over the end of the connector when we're done. And we'll probably end up gluing that on as well. All right, so our little terminals will go down into the connector, like pretty much all the way down into the bottom there, which means this guy is going to go into the connector, but we're going to try and minimize how much this sticks out from the back of the connector. So I'm going to bend the little ends of this stuff a little bit. So I'm trying to determine how much I want to bend them. So probably not a whole lot on the end here. All right, so I'm bending the ends just a little bit here, shortening them up and doubling up the width of them in a sense. So yeah, just something like that. And that will help us in making these a little bit easier for this the terminals to grab on to this thin little wire. I'm also going to solder this thing too, solder it all together. All right, so I've got my little terminal here. I've got my fancy crimper. I'm going to stick this in the crimper, and you can do this with other crimpers, with other electrical crimper tools. This just makes it really professional and neat looking. And then we're going to stick this guy in there, crimp this thing down, and then we'll solder it on top of this. So yeah, I don't think that did anything at all. Oh, it kind of keeps it from coming all the way out, but all right. So now we're going to solder it. So I'm going to stick it in my vise here just to hold it while I solder. Then I've got flux I'm going to use to solder with. This is key to having an easy time soldering. Put a little bit of flux. And the flux functions as it breaks up an oxidized layer on top of the metal, and also kind of functions as a lubricant, but not really, but that's kind of how it feels like. And that's in there nice and solid. There's a nice solid connection in there now. So we do the same thing, flip this over, put another connection on the other end. In rosin core solder here, that's what you use for electrical stuff. Again, I'll put a link to it in the description of the video. There, we got a nice solid electrical connection there, and now I want to throw some heat shrink on there, and basically I need the smallest heat shrink I can get that will fit over our terminals here, which I believe is this one. All right, and then I want to sort of put our new connector into the old connector here on the bike, and sort of figure out, all right, where my alignment of wires is. Because before I put our new little resistor in here, I need to know which holes it goes into so that it will line up correctly with the correct wires here. So the black and the orange are on this side, that is these two over here. So it's those two holes right there. Those are the ones we want. So just making a note of that. I could mark this with a pen or something if I wanted to. All right, you'll note that these connectors come with these little rubber grommets, and these are supposed to go on a wire. Like if we pretend this is a wire, like you would slide this on the wire, and then you'd crimp the little terminal onto both the wire and that grommet, and that would and then this grommet functions as a little a water blocker, whatever, and it goes in so that when you put the terminal into the connector, it goes in the end like that. We're not doing that on this one. It just didn't make sense with this thin little wire. To make this waterproof, that's what this cap is for. The cap's gonna go on the end and cover everything up and make it waterproof that way. We are putting this heat shrink on here to act as sort of an insulator to sort of protect things from abrasion. Essentially, it'll give this thing a little bit longer life. And I'm not gonna wait a second to shrink the actual heat shrink down. I'm gonna put these the terminals into the connector first. All right, I'm gonna shrink this heat shrink down now. See how this goes. All right, so that is now clicked in. They're both clicked in. Now we've got this little connector like that. Now this should work, and we can test this thing out before we get too far with it. But then our next step would be to stick this guy on here and to put a little bit of a RTV on here as well, so that it will sort of glue that in. But yeah, that would be our connector, our dongle, when we're done. So let's test it out, make sure it works. All right, here's our newly made dongle. Stick this guy in here, put that in, and now we'll start the bike and see if it'll go in gear. All right, so dongle is verified working. Let me go ahead and take this back off. All right, so to finish this thing off, make sure it's waterproof, make it a next level professional. We're going to take this guy, we're going to take some, I got some RTV here. We're going to make sure this thing is waterproof. Put the RTV around the edges of this. So just like that, basically. And then should be able to just shove this guy on. A little piece of paper towel here, and we'll just try to clean this up. So yeah, and then that is it. That should be waterproof. Yeah, that's our dongle. But I'll go ahead and let this RTV dry for a few hours, and then it should be good to go.